Thanks for joining us here at Rose Quartz Mediumship Podcast, where we simply adore anything and everything healing and metaphysically based. I want to talk a little bit about a couple of clients who I worked with this week. If we know each other and you have done any workshops with me or done any one-on-one coaching, you know that I am a huge, huge believer in challenging the stories that we tell ourselves, both the stories that we're cognitively, cerebrally telling ourselves, as well as the stories that are told in our nervous system and held in our nervous system. And I believe wholeheartedly, and I watch with client after client after client after client, workshop after workshop, that when we tell a different story and when we engage our nervous system with the new story, that we change our reality. And so I want to start by saying that I believe that humans will take a small number of facts and we will create a story around those facts. And that story that we creates the meaning out of the human experience. And the meaning that we create out of the human experience makes us feel a specific way. It elicits specific emotions. And so if you don't like the way that you are feeling currently, challenge the stories that you are telling yourself, because those stories create the meaning out of the human experience, and that meaning that you create out of the human experience is going to elicit specific emotions. So if you don't like the emotions that you're feeling, challenge the story that you're telling yourself. And I had a couple really beautiful examples with clients this week, one-on-one coaching clients this week, that I wanted to take a minute and explore a little bit. So I had a client who was away on a business trip. She had gone to a different area in the US to do some business. And in our coaching session, she had this story that she was somehow running away from or trying to get away from things, situations, dynamics, emotions that she didn't want to be feeling. And so she was going on this business trip as a way to escape or get away from. And so that story that she was telling was eliciting some emotion of shame. It's pretty easy to see how that could happen, right? If she was telling the story that she was running away from a dynamic or a situation in her current reality, and she was going on this business trip to get away because in some capacity she couldn't handle the emotion that she was sitting in her current situation, that would elicit the emotion of shame if she also self-identifies as somebody who loves to do profound, deep, emotional work. So as she was telling me how things were going for her on this business trip, I asked her to pause with me and really explore the story that she was telling about running away, that this was a flight response, that this was her not being able to handle the dynamic and the situation that she was sitting in. She told me the story of how it was that she decided to go on this business trip. There was the opportunity for her to, on kind of a short notice, go on this business trip. And she took it. And then she was sitting in shame around the fact that she couldn't handle her reality. And as she told me the facts of what was happening for her, I could hear the facts and I could hear the story that she was telling. And so in the moment where we paused and I asked her to really unpack the story that she was telling herself, she told the story. And then I do what I typically do when I've been working with a client who understands how to challenge their own stories. I'm not going to provide the new story for you if you have learned these tools and skills through working with me. And so the way that I challenge somebody is say, tell me a different story. And she has done this with me countless times. Countless times. So she knew exactly what I was looking for her to do. And it was so fun to watch her sit upright after she was sitting in a very shamey posture, right? So the body exhibits the emotions that we're feeling, and she was feeling shame for running away. And so she was sitting in this posture where she was making herself small. Her shoulders were rolled in, turned in. Her head was down. Her chest was kind of collapsed. And as soon as I asked her to tell me a different story, the body shifted. There was an immediate somatic response. She sat upright. Her chest opened up. Her shoulders opened up. Her head came up. She did this cute little wiggle thing that I love to watch her do. It's, to me, looks like she's shaking off the new story. I don't know that she even has conscious awareness of what her body is doing. But she does this little wiggle thing. And she said, a new story is with her head up, her shoulders back, her chest open. She told me a new story. And the new story was that she'd made a very conscious choice. That the dynamic that she was in was not one that she wanted to continue to put herself in. She had the option to attend an event in the place that she lived. And at that event, there would be some people who don't make her feel good. She doesn't feel good about herself when she's in contact with those people right now. And I think that's important to say, because as people change and as our dynamic changes and as we change, we can feel very different in relationship with someone or in contact with someone, in connection with someone, as we change, as they change, as the dynamic changes. So in this moment in time, it didn't feel good or safe to her to be in connection with this individual. Makes sense. So when the opportunity came where she could either go to this event and cross paths with this individual who she knew she would walk away from the interaction with not feeling good, not feeling empowered. And then she had the opportunity to go on this business trip. She took the opportunity to go on the business trip. So when I asked her to tell me a different story, the new story sounded a bit like this. I'm very aware of how I feel when I'm in connection with this particular individual. And I made a very conscious choice to care for myself and pick an option that I knew would feel good to and for me. Totally different story. Same exact facts. The facts are that she had an opportunity to go to an event by her home where she wasn't going to feel good, or to take an opportunity to go on this business trip. That's it. Those are the facts. She chose to go on the business trip. The story that she had originally created is that she was somehow running from, trying to get away from, that she didn't have the capacity to handle the emotions that she was sitting in. The story that she retold was that she chose herself. She chose self-care. She had enough conscious awareness of where she was at and where this dynamic was at that she wasn't willing to traumatize herself and her nervous system by going to this event and crossing paths with somebody who wasn't going to make her feel good. And so she made the choice to pick herself, to pick going on this business trip. This opportunity popped up. It was a beautiful opportunity. She took it. Can you feel the difference in those two stories? Wildly different stories. They're going to elicit wildly different emotions. In one scenario, she's feeling shame. In another scenario, she's feeling pride and empowerment. If you don't like the way that you're feeling, change the stories that you're telling. I help people all day, every day, tell different stories. The facts don't change, but the story that we are telling ourselves, both from a cognitive cerebral standpoint as well as an embodied standpoint, make a huge difference in how we feel. The reality is that this woman chose herself. And that took her a lot of work. We've been working together for a period of time to get her into a place where she felt worthy of choosing herself. And so this was a huge win. It was the demonstration of healing. It was the demonstration of personal development. It was the demonstration of integration of the work that we'd been doing. And the next step to that work was to tell a different story. We get stuck telling the same kinds of stories, and we will tell the same story on repeat in our mind, and it makes us feel a way. The way she was feeling was shame. The new story, with the same exact facts, allowed her to feel empowered and filled with pride. Change the stories that you are telling yourself. And I am not suggesting that you create a bullshit story that isn't based in reality. That wouldn't work either. If she was actually running from the situation, I wouldn't be asking her to tell me a new story. But that wasn't what was happening. She was picking herself. She was choosing herself. She was demonstrating the integration of healing and personal development. It was such a beautiful thing to me. But she was still stuck in an old story. I love helping people change the story that they are telling, because it literally changes everything in your reality. It changes your emotional frequency. It changes your vibrational frequency. And when we change our emotional and vibrational frequency, we become a frequency and vibrational match through law of attraction for very different experiences, very different blessings, very different people in our reality. And so for her to shift this story from one of disempowerment, one of shame, into a place of empowerment and a place of pride is not only going to make her feel those things, but there's this huge ripple effect where from law of attraction, she's going to attract back different things because she's in a different frequency. And it was really important to me, as it is with every single one of my clients, that we engaged the nervous system. And so I saw a body posture change. I watched her face change. I watched an enormous somatic shift come out of this woman. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I love doing this work with people. Because sometimes we think we need to change our whole life. I need to quit the job. I need to leave the partner. I need to discontinue this thing. I need to lose the weight. I need to. And so frequently, it is simply about telling a different story. And when we tell a different story and we engage our nervous system, we change our reality. And the magnitude of that is huge. Huge. And I want to tell you a second story about another client who I was working with this week. She's a relatively new client to me. We've been working together for only a couple of months. And we've been working on shame. And she came in to the session this week, and We went over the homework that I had given her. I oftentimes send people home with exercises or things to work on or through. So we went over the homework that she'd gone home with. And then she started telling me about how she was experiencing shame around something. And part of my job is to help co-regulate a nervous system and to hold a ground for somebody who's feeling a really intense emotion so that it allows them to fully be present with the emotion that they're feeling. And so I was doing that for her as she was telling me the story of the way that she was feeling this really intense form of shame. And this young woman lost a parent when she was a small child. And obviously, there's a huge ripple effect for her in her life with that. And she had slapped this label on herself of having an anxious attachment. And even in telling me the story about what she was experiencing this profound form of shame around, she was saying, I don't like this label. I don't like putting labels on myself at all. Say nothing about this label. And so she is somebody who self-identifies as an independent woman. And so for her, there was this contrast between having this anxious attachment and being an independent woman, which was really important to her. And she was struggling with the duality of that. And so we explored more deeply the label that she'd put on herself. It's really easy to see how that label would make sense, right? She lost a parent as a young child. And so it makes sense that she might have an anxious attachment. But the more that we unpacked the anxious attachment and the story that she was telling there, the more she was able to recognize that maybe she didn't have the kind of anxious attachment that she thought that she had. When her partner leaves the room or goes skiing for a day or is working for a day, there's no anxiety. None. But if her partner missed a phone call, she would have anxiety. And so we started to really unpack, is that an anxious attachment? Or do you want a deep sense of belonging with your partner? Do you want safety? Do you want predictability? And she was able to say what it was that she wanted to feel inside of a relationship. She wanted to feel safe. She wanted to feel connected. She wanted a deep sense of belonging. And so she was struggling with the fact that she'd put this label of anxious attachment on herself. And in some capacity, she'd also put the label of that as bad or wrong, which made it bad or wrong for her to care about this deep sense of belonging and safety and connection that she wants with her partner. And when we decoupled those things a little bit, she was able to recognize that she wants to be in a relationship where there's safety and connection and belonging and depth. And she wouldn't ever want to be in a relationship where a phone call was missed and it didn't elicit an emotion, because she's deeply connected to this human. So of course she's going to wonder what's happening. And simultaneously, she doesn't want her mind to spiral into creating this bigger story. But the fact that there was a little anxiety was actually okay for her. It was feedback for her that this was a relationship that was important to her. That this human who she's with, she cares about. She worries about. That they have depth and belonging and connection. And if those things weren't present, she wouldn't care if a phone call was missed. But because those things are present, she is going to care. And there is going to be some worry and there is going to be some anxiety, and that's normal and that's healthy. That's okay. If it spirals into something really big, that's something for her to work on. But this label that she'd put on herself was creating a scenario where she was feeling shame and feeling like she somehow needed to fix this, when it's actually exactly what she wants. She wants depth. She wants belonging. She wants connection. She wants safety. She wants predictability. Those aren't things that she wants to work to get away from. That's what she's trying to lean into. And so we really looked at the story that she was telling herself there. That this was an anxious attachment and there was something bad or wrong and she should feel shame about it. And by the end of the session, she landed in this place where she said, I want that. And I want my partner to want that. And if I miss a phone call, I want my partner to think about me and to wonder if I'm okay and to care about me and our connection and our relationship. And sometimes I think when we put these labels on ourselves, it elicits a specific emotion, like shame or guilt. When sometimes we shouldn't be feeling shame or guilt at all about wanting a deep, vulnerable, connected relationship where we have a sense of belonging. That is what she wants. That's what she's working towards. That's what she's trying to lean into. And when we could remove that label, she could say, I want to make sure that I don't spiral. I want to make sure I don't spiral. That this doesn't create this big story in my mind. Okay, that is a very different thing to work on than working on not caring if a conversation is missed, or an engagement is missed, or an interaction is missed. Those are two very different things. And so she told a different story. She felt a different way. It removed the shame that she was sitting in and feeling, and allowed her to really see that this is what she wants for her life. This is the kind of interaction. This is the kind of relationship. This is the kind of depth that she wants. And it doesn't mean that she doesn't have to check herself if she starts spiraling, but to check herself at the spiral rather than checking herself at caring that an engagement was missed, that an interaction was missed. She wants to be able to worry about her partner. It's a demonstration of love and caring. And so it was a neat opportunity to tell a different story and remove a label and do some decoupling in some situations that had been overcoupled for her. And she walked away from the session and was going to have a very different conversation with her partner. Say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I want. And I can identify that sometimes my mind might spiral, and I don't want that to happen. But I want to care about you, and I want to lean into you, and I want to lean into us, and I want to lean into safety and connection and belonging inside of our relationship. Whereas originally, she'd been trying to figure out how to not do that. And so we tell ourselves stories all day, every day, about everything that we do. And I think telling different stories gives us the opportunity to feel different and to attract different experiences and people and blessings into our life. And so I wanted to take an opportunity and just talk about how storytelling is something that we all do every day, on repeat. And the fastest way to change your life is to change the stories that you're telling. And I'm not saying to fabricate a story that is not grounded in truth. I'm saying to challenge the stories that you tell and really ask yourself, is that story serving me? And if not, how can I challenge my own story and feel the truth of the new story in my nervous system, in my body, and in my mind? So I'm just going to invite you to start to identify the kinds of stories that you tell yourself. And if they align with the way that you want to be feeling. And if they don't, challenge them.